It's time to talk fantasy football. It's time to let them know. Where you let us crunch the numbers while you crush the competition. So grab your playbooks and crack a cold one, because here's your hosts, Teak and Baney.
Welcome back, guys. Week 16. If you survived the first round of your playoffs, welcome, fellas. We're going to get right on into it. This is a full episode, start, sits, injury reports, breaking news. We have everything for you in this one because the layout of the games is a little different. So we have the Thursday night game, obviously. We have a couple Saturday night games. That's what's going to throw the episodes off. So let's get underway. You see the hat, obviously. So you know about the breaking news. We're going to start with the breaking news. Michael Penix Jr. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons are benching Kirk Cousins for rookie QB Michael Penix Jr. But just let me say my piece, okay, coming from an Atlanta fan. Specifically, we're talking about Kirk Cousins. Now, before I get into it, let me say Kirk is a solid QB. In this league, no doubt about it. He's been it for quite some time. Yeah, the playoff record's not what it should be, but he's been solid in the regular season. But through the last 5 games, numbers, well, let's just say they're not great. Okay, we all know the numbers. We're talking 1 touchdown and 9 interceptions. It's a 1-to-9 touchdown interception ratio. Yikes! You have to do something if you're an organization. Seeing those numbers. I mean, those numbers are alarming. You can't survive in the NFL throwing the ball over to the other team that often. You just can't. You can't expect to win games with that kind of turnover issue. It's not like Cousins is a rookie out there. So we're going to have some growing pains with Penix. But this guy who's been in the league for over a decade, what is going on with him? Is it the tail end of his career? Is it lingering of the injury? Is he just not comfortable with the system? Something's going on, but it has to be done. But here's the thing. The team has a solution. Everybody made fun of that solution on draft day when they selected Michael Penix 8th overall. Now it might come to fruition where they look like total geniuses. This rookie out of Washington, this guy has lit it up in college, okay? It's now time for him to get a shot in the NFL. Yes, it's going to be a big step up, but what I've seen from Kirk, it might just be the move at the right time, and it's time for change. Couple things about Penix here. Penix finished his college career with some ridiculous numbers. If you're not familiar with Michael Penix, we're talking over 4,000 passing yards in multiple seasons. Strong decision-making, cannon of an arm, okay? The guy can make all the throws you need, from deep bombs to threading needles in the game. Unlike Kirk, Penix has shown a lot of poise under pressure, staying calm even when things do get tough. Now, I get it. The NFL is a different animal, okay? The speed of the game, the complexity of defenses, it's all next level compared to college. But what do we have to lose here? Nothing. If you're the team, what's the point of getting rid of the season with Kirk Cousins at the QB position, holding you back? The Falcons do have playoff aspirations right now, but that ratio is hurting their chances more than helping. Some say it's a little bit too late. They should have did it earlier. I kind of agree. We'll see. Just because we have to win out, and we have to make sure Tampa loses because we do hold the tiebreaker. Kirk is a seasoned vet, no doubt. You just can't win. Can't win with those turnovers. I can't stress that enough. Penix got the youth, arm strength, the ability to spark an offense. You can tell when a guy has that it factor, and I do believe Penix has it. He's hungry. He's got the tools. He's more likely to grow into something special in this league than to sink under pressure. Some people might think it's too early for Penix still. Let him sit behind Kirk, learn the ropes. But the way I see it, if you're not going to win with Kirk now, why not roll the dice on your future? Okay? So, yes, I am calling it. I agree with the decision. It is time to bench Kirk Cousins. It's time for Michael Penix Jr. to take the reins. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about that. But I had just to get that off my chest being a Falcons fan. So that's our breaking news. Let's go over to the injury report for fantasy here. Week 16. We got David Montgomery, running back, who's been a key piece of this offense, this Lions offense, all season long. He's now suffering an MCL injury during Sunday's tough loss against the Buffalo Bills. Sources tell ESPN that Montgomery is undergoing additional testing to determine the full extent of the damage, also getting a second opinion to confirm the diagnosis as well. Adam Schefter posted that on X. Right now, it's looking like he could be lost for the rest of the season. There is hopes he comes back for late playoffs. But it would be a huge loss for Detroit's 1-2 punch of Knuckles and Sonic there, down to just Jahmyr Gibbs. But moving on to our second injury report here. This one hits close to home for Cleveland fans, and that is running back Nick Chubb. One of the league's most respected running backs suffered yet another significant injury, and this time a broken foot. You got to feel for him after working so hard to get back on the field from his previous injury. But now we're just left kind of wondering what this means for Nick Chubb and Nick Chubb's future. You have to wonder when enough is enough. The toll running backs take on their bodies is unimaginable. I don't think anyone wants to see his career cut short because of this, but at the same time, we just can't ignore the fact that he's been through a lot to get back at this point. And then he has another setback like this. With Chubb out for the season, Jerome Ford steps back into that starting role for this team. That's huge for fantasy owners, unfortunately, because you hate to see a big name like Chubb, like I said, work back from injury and then have another one. But that is our breaking news and injury report. We're going to get into the starts first, my three starts, and then followed by the sits. And then we'll wrap it up for you guys for week 16. So let's get into it here. All right. My first one. Let's talk about a key player to watch this week. That's James Conner for the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. Now, if you've been paying attention, you know the last four running backs to face Carolina Panthers have been putting up some serious numbers, averaging a solid 123 yards per game. There's no small feat against the defense that's been struggling to contain the ground game. Okay. But here's where it gets even more interesting. James Conner himself has been on a roll recently. Over his last three games, he's averaging 89 yards per game, showing consistency and getting the job done in crucial moments. So you're going to ask me, Teak, what's this all mean? Well, you look at the stats and the matchup, it's hard to ignore the signs. Everything is lining up for Conner to have a massive game. The Panthers defense has been vulnerable. We've seen this. Conner's been running with power, has the vision, he's getting in the end zone. If there's ever been a week for him to break out, again, this could be it. So fantasy managers, keep an eye on Conner. All signs point to a big performance this week. The stars are aligning for your playoff hopes here, and it's prime for another big one for James Conner, I believe. Okay, so moving on. We previously talked about this guy, just a small part in the beginning here. My next start follows into that. I have running back Jerome Ford. He's in for a major opportunity this week, as we explained with Nick Chubb out for the season. Ford is stepping into a full workload, and that's huge for fantasy owners, especially if they're running low on the running back position. Someone dropped him. I picked him up on a waiver. Not that I needed him, but hey, if someone goes down and I win this week and I need him for the championship, I got him. He's just not going to be carrying the ball either. But with this increased role, he's going to be a focal point of this offense. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Ford finds himself in a blowout game script where they go up big against the Browns. Ford becomes even more an enticing play. Why, you ask? Because he's not just a bruiser between the tackles, he's also a reliable pass catcher. Okay? Something Nick Chubb is not. And when Cleveland starts to play catch up, Ford's ability to catch passes could really boost his fantasy value. So, especially if you're in PPR leagues, full point, that's going to be huge. So, his fantasy goes through the roof with that. So, whether it's grinding out the clock or getting some easy yards through the air, Ford is set to be a big factor this week. If you're in need of a running back with upside, Ford could be your guy with Chubb out. This is his backfield now, and fantasy owners should be excited about what's to come with Ford this week. Okay? Now, you can call it a starts running back episode if you want. I'm high on the running backs for some reason this week. This guy let me down last week, but we'll get into that. My last start here, I have Chuba Hubbard, okay, with a bounce back week. Now, if you had Hubbard in your lineup last week, you were probably pretty disappointed with the results, but here's the thing. It wasn't really a reflection of his talent or role last week. It wasn't. The Panthers were quickly game scripted out of that one. If anybody watched that game. When Carolina falls behind, it's tough for their running backs to get much going, if you've been watching Carolina throughout the weeks. That being said, Chuba Hubbard has been playing better ball overall. And while game scripts are always a risk when dealing with the Panthers, this week's setup is much better situation for him. Here's why. The Arizona defense has been very vulnerable for the running backs, allowing explosive runs at the third highest rate this season. That's not all. Since week 11, they continue to struggle. They also given up 8th most receiving yards to backs. Also allowed 7th most fantasy points per game to the position. So with Hubbard being involved both on the ground and in the passing game, he's a great bounce back candidate this week. If you're thinking about benching him after last week, I'd reconsider. I really would. This could be the week he finds his rhythm again. With the Cardinals defense leaking yards in multiple areas, Hubbard has that potential for a big game, especially if the Panthers stay competitive this week. All right. That wraps up the starts. We're going to get right on into the sits. We're giving you the full episode for you guys because it's a weird week. Hope the holidays are going good for everybody. And let's try to get to this fantasy championship, Show that bling, the trophies. I don't know if you guys have the rings, banners, whatever you guys got. We got to try to win those. But first sit here, Isaiah Pacheco. All right. There's a chance Mahomes might sit out. I don't know if that happens or not. I don't see it happening, but it could definitely impact the Chiefs' offense flow. But even if Mahomes is in the game, Pacheco's role is a bit murky right now. He's still splitting carries with Kareem Hunt, so it's hard to just volume-wise, it'll even get even weak. To make things even trickier, the Texans, man, these Texans have been really tough against the running backs this season. Okay, they're currently ranked 6th best in the league in terms of limiting fantasy production for running backs. So even if Pacheco gets his usual workload, he's in for a tough matchup. Now, if you got Pacheco in your lineup, you'll want to manage your expectations, obviously, in my eyes. If Mahomes sits, it's possible Pacheco could see a bit more involvement, but without a high-powered passing attack to keep defenses on their toes, Texans defense could easily hone in on him. On top of that, the split, like I said, with Hunt makes it tough to predict how much he really is going to be used. Bottom line, he is a risky start in my book, especially if you got solid options. I would just keep an eye on Mahomes' status first, but don't be surprised if Pacheco doesn't hit his usual ceiling against some tough Texans defense. So that's my first sit there. Next one here. Well, next two are actually going to be on the same team. I've never done this before, I don't think. So this is going to be a first for me. First one, I got Michael Pittman Jr., okay? who's definitely been a roller coaster for fantasy owners. I think we can all agree that all season long. One week he looks like a stud, next week you're wondering where he went. It's been frustrating to say the least. But here's the interesting part. Recently, he's been getting a decent amount of targets. I don't know if anybody's keeping track of those. Over the last 3 games, he's averaging 7 targets per game. That's solid volume. We all know how important that is to receivers for fantasy potential. And we all know how important that is to me as well. I've been preaching out with him for years on this podcast. But the catch here this season, despite that solid target share, Pittman has only cracked double digits in fantasy points once during that stretch I just mentioned. So while he's getting looks, he's just not consistently converting them into big fantasy production, which is very odd. That's the tough part with him. The volume is there, but the results haven't been. If you're rostering Pittman, you're probably on the fence about starting him this week. He has the opportunity, but it's tough to trust him given the inconsistency. It really is. So you're basically hoping those targets finally turn into something for consistent fantasy output, but there's no guarantee with Pittman. And this will hone in on my last sit here. This plays off that one. My last sit here is Anthony Richardson. This quarterback, everybody was high on. You've been riding Richardson train. You've probably noticed that his fantasy value is almost entirely tied to his rushing ability. Okay. Richardson is a rushing dependent quarterback. Okay. And his upside comes from the ability to score with his legs, especially on the ground. But what makes this even more important is that mostly based on getting him a rushing touchdown. Without that, that fantasy ceiling to me drops significantly. You really can't rely on him to win you a week that you need through the air. His passing game has been inconsistent at best. He's shown flashes of potential, but he's not going to give you like 250 multiple touchdowns on a regular basis. That's just not going to happen with this guy. He's a wild card, but unless he finds the end zone with his legs, he's not likely to deliver you huge fantasy numbers. So what does this mean for your lineup? Okay. Well, if you're starting Richardson, it's likely because you're hoping for that rushing touchdown, like I mentioned, or maybe a big run into the red zone, something like that. That's his path to fantasy relevance. But if he doesn't get a rushing touchdown, you're probably looking at a disappointing outing. Bottom line, Richardson upside's enticing, but it's only because of his rushing potential. His floor is pretty low unless he finds the end zone on the ground. Like I said, he's a risky start in my eyes, especially if you have a more reliable QB option. I know me and Badge talked about it. He has Anthony Richardson in like almost every league, and he's been floating quarterbacks. So, but that wraps up the full starts and sits episode combined. It's just for this week for Christmas because the games. We appreciate all the love you guys are giving us. Excuse me. It was a huge week 15 for us last week. We appreciate you guys viewing, liking the videos, following us. Please hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 400 subscribers. It is totally free. Comment down below what you liked about the starts and sits, what you didn't like. We love talking to people about opinions on football. We're addicted. So we love the feedback. We hope everybody wish you guys happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll catch you on the next one.